Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Focus on Liberia. This is Prime Time Sunday. My name is Dennis Jai, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In today's edition of Prime Time Sunday, we're going to be looking at the Sapo National Park, and that's located in Sino County, the Sapo National Park. We'll be taking an adventure through the Sapo National Park. I have with me my co-host, Jackie Sayer, who's going to be introducing our guests and also the show. Jackie, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm very excited to be here and to discuss the Sapo National Park. I will start with a little introduction of the park and also of our guest speaker today. So Sapo National Park is located, for those of you who don't know, is located in the Upper Guinean forest ecosystem. It's a biodiversity hotspot that has the highest mammal species diversity of any region in the world, according to Conservation International. The forests are home to an exceptional concentration of vulnerable, threatened, or endangered species as defined by the Convention on the International Trade in Endangered Species. Sapo National Park is a regional center of endemism and biodiversity, and it hosts and 125 mammal species and about 590 types of birds, including the African golden cat, Liberian mongoose, white-breasted guinea fowl, and the white-necked rock fowl. The park is also home to the African civet, I think, the gray parrot, the giant forest hog, great blue turaco, pangolin, speckled trotted otter, monkey, endangered Diana monkey, crocodiles, leopards, bee eaters, hornbills, and the list goes on. In 1976, the Liberian Forestry Development Authority was created to manage and preserve the country's forest resources. A year later, in 1977, the Division of Wildlife and National Parks was formed. By 1982, 7 protected areas were proposed in Liberia, but of these, only Sapo National Park was formally designated in 1983 by the People's Redemption Council. At the time, and for 20 years, it covered an area of 505 square miles east of the Sino River, and that is important because we'll discuss the expansion as well, south of the Sino River and south of the Putu Mountains. So the ecosystem is important to the conservation of the biodiversity of Liberia and of West Africa as a whole. And we are very honored today to have with us a conservation specialist, Mr. Shadrach Kewian, who is going to talk to us about it. So Shadrach is a conservation practitioner with more than 12 years of experience in biodiversity conservation, protected area management, environmental policy design, climate change, community engagement, and capacity building. Shadrach leads the strategic design and technical implementation of Fauna and Flora International's program in the southeast of Liberia. His areas of expertise include community-based natural resource management. He earned a Master of Philosophy in Conservation Leadership from the University of Cambridge in 2015 and a Bachelor of Science in Biology from the University of Liberia in 2009. And as I said before, we are very honored to have you, Shadrach. Welcome.
Thank you very much to you, Jackie and Dennis. It's my pleasure to be on this program.
So let's get the ball rolling. First, tell us how you got involved in conservation, and then we'll take it from there.
Thank you very much. I'm always very happy to share my experience about conservation, and especially Sapo National Park, because I'm very passionate about both Sapo National Park and conservation in general. So my journey into conservation was rather, I didn't have a kind of eureka moment per se, but over time I was drawn to conservation. So like most students in Liberia graduating from high school, I wanted to become a medical doctor. So I entered the University of Liberia to study biology and chemistry. As we went through the course, and I did some visits. One day, a friend of mine took me to the hospital, and she had a friend in the hospital, and the environment was so depressing for me. And there and then I realized I could not be a doctor. So what else could I do? So we had a course, ecology course, and the teacher was very good, Mr. Benjamin Kamu. And I was inspired, like, okay, if I can do medicine, I think maybe I could become an ecologist. So I started to follow the, environmental conversation in Nigeria. One thing led to another. In 2009, I was selected as National Youth Delegate to go to the climate change conference in Copenhagen, Denmark. And coincidentally, my trip to Copenhagen was sponsored by Fauna and Flora International. Obviously, I had to like understand this organization that was supporting my trip. What do they do? And I was fascinated by the work they were doing. I met some of Fauna and Flora International staff at this conference. When I came back, I continued to be engaged in various environmental initiatives. We had a youth group. We're doing some small environmental projects, awareness raising, and things like that, cleaning up mangrove swamp. So in 2012, our opportunity arose, and I joined Fauna and Flora International. So moving from the environment to conservation is not that different, but it's a little bit different. So I've been at FFI since then. Apart from break, I took to go to school, and I just have you know, thrown myself at the work and learn as much as I can about biodiversity, about conservation, and about how I can be able to contribute professionally to help protecting Liberia's unique biodiversity.
Dennis?
Thank you. Thank you. We want to welcome you to Focus on Liberia. We want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. This is Sapo National Park. And you said, biodiversity, conservation, environment. Those are three words, break it down for me for someone in Dodwiken or in Zogowe who's watching today.
So biodiversity is basically the diversity of life. Life is in all its form, whether at the genetic level, whether at the species level, whether the ecosystem level. So every living thing, as you say in science, all living things will be considered biodiversity. Conservation is about management of wild places, of wildlife, so to ensure that current generation pass on um, something to future generation. So conservation is about sustainable management of natural resources. In this case, the focus being the biodiversity. But when we talk about biodiversity conservation as a practice, it encompasses the science of ecology, and all the other branches, biology, zoology, but it also incorporates the social aspects, you know, community engagement, anthropology. So biodiversity conservation is using the science, the social and biological sciences um, to work toward the sustainable management of natural resources. In this case, focus being on the wildlife.
Yeah, thank you. So Shadrach, when we were, we know Sapo National Forest. We know about it. We've read about it. But doing research for this park and reading about, the importance of the park to not only Liberia but to also the ecosystem of the world. You know, this forest is so rich, with the amount of over 150 different species of birds and butterflies. And I was reading it, I was like, is this a secret? Why are we not harnessing this? Because this is, when I went to Liberia some years ago, I took my daughter, and I took her friend along with me, as I said to you before. And her friend's father works at the lab of ornithology at Cornell. And he called us when we're in Liberia and he said, "You have to go to Sapo National Forest. You have to go, you know?" And I was like, "What? What? Why?" And he kept talking about the birds. And then, we started to read it. I mean, we didn't get to go there. But just tell us, how important is Sapo to not only the ecosystem of Liberia, but the global environment?
Thank you. I think the world is preparing for the climate change conference in Scotland in Glasgow, COP26. And in the lead up to this conference, you hear a lot of conversation around the need for the world to put in place mechanism to keep the temperature below 1.5 degrees Celsius, the rise in temperature. And one of the solutions being proffered by a lot of people is about planting trees. But one thing that get overlooked when people are talking about planting trees is keeping trees planted. So,
Yes.
in terms of the importance of Sapo, global importance of Sapo, Sapo is a huge carbon sink, and we all know the negative impact that carbon dioxide is having on the Earth's atmosphere. So, protecting Sapo effectively, the species, the people, it helps to protect the world in terms of the carbon that is stored and captured. But also, if you bring it closer to home, it also has cultural value for people. It makes communities that are living in that environment more resilient. And when we're talking about climate change, a lot of emphasis is on working toward building resilient societies. So having a forest like Sapo National Park helps to make communities and more resilient to the impact of climate change, because this natural system, which has changed over millions of years, um, arrive at the current state is in because of a lot of things that have happened. Soil carbon that has been stored, biodiversity, plant and animal life that have evolved in that location. So, in terms of the general ecosystem value of Sapo National Park, to Liberia is huge, to the world is also huge. And if you focus down on the biodiversity, the park holds the last remaining stronghold of a lot of species. For example, you have heard of pygmy hippopotamus. You also have heard of West African chimpanzee. Both of those animals are critically endangered, which on the IUCN Red List is the last level before it become extinct in the wild, and they have very very strong viable populations in Sapo National Park. So keeping this forest healthy, keeping this forest protected, protects these species, and then also offer the ecosystem services that it provides to Liberia and the rest of the world. And then to come down to your other question where you've talked about why is Sapo or like hitting, like why is it not known? I think is a result of a lot of things in Liberia. Most things about Liberia are not known, especially when it comes to the environmental sector. So Sapo is in that regard a product of the environment that is the country is in Liberia. But if you look at the kind of significance that it has in terms of biodiversity and ecosystem functions, it should be well known. It is well known, but mostly in the scientific community. And efforts are being made now to increase visibility of Sapo National Park, to encourage tourism to Sapo National Park, ecotourism, both locally and internationally. So we hope that maybe in the next 12 to 24 months, if we do have a conversation again about Sapo National Park, I should be able to tell you that or you should be able to say, like, I think a lot more people know about Sapo National Park than when we spoke the last time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Jackie asked a very good because I too, uh, I mean, I know Sapo National Park, and many I will tell you why. But a lot of people I was talking to, and they say, "Oh, do we have that in Liberia? What is Sapo National Park?" So let's take some time, and just tell us and our audience about this Sapo National Park, where specifically it is located, in actual terms, uh, and what else can you tell about it? I have on the screen something, and you can describe that better of what we're looking at, and where exactly is this Sapo National Park. Sometimes when people think of park, they think of it as a place separate. It's bush, right? It's separate from where people live. So describe for me Sapo National Park.
Okay, so geographically, Sapo National Park is in the southeast of Liberia. Specifically, it's in Sino, Grand Gide, and River G counties. Now, most people know Sapo National Park to be in Sino County, and that is because about 90% of the park is in Sino, and the other 10% is shared between River G and Grand Gide counties. So, in terms of actual location, that's where Sapo is. The park headquarters, is in a place called Town, which is in Sino County. But when you come to the forest, Sapo is a lowland tropical broadleaf evergreen rainforest. What that basically means is a forest that is in the place that has a lot of rain falls in Sapo National Park. We even have a joke that the rainy season in Sapo is all year, so we have 12 months of rain in Sapo National Park. Now, this is important because that frequency of rain has contributed to the richness of that landscape because all of the interaction at the ecosystem level and enriches this place. And what you see on the screen is a brochure designed by Fauna and Flora International and the Forestry Development Authority that just kind of give a snapshot of what Sapo National Park is. And if you look on the far right, you see chimpanzee. So actually, that's a West African chimpanzee, so Panchaglottis virus, which is the most genetically distinct subspecies of the common chimpanzee. We all know that the chimpanzees are the closest relatives of humans. So the pack holds the highest population of chimpanzees in Liberia. That's important because it is an indication of the health of that ecosystem that it has that much chimpanzee. Because all of the different foods and ecosystem that a chimpanzee needs to survive can be found there. So when you go into the forest, you made a very good point, Dennis, about people thinking that the park is separate from, it's kind of fenced off. No. Sapo is contiguous with the forest and the communities around. What I mean is there is not a kind of physical boundary that shows where the park starts and where the community forest begins. There is a demarcation on the ground in terms of brushing of the area so that people know when they're entering the park, when they are leaving the park. But the communities around, we have a little over 70 communities around the park. So that's a lot of communities in that area. And these people have cultural attachment to this area in terms of the history um, and the value that it has for them. For example, the people in the area called Weja, um, Dennis, I think you will know the Weja people.
Yeah.
The chimpanzees are a totem to them and is considered sacred for them. They have laws protecting chimpanzees, traditional laws protecting chimpanzees, and that has also contributed to having a high population of chimpanzees in that area. So aside from the trees or the
Uh,
forest.
Shadrach, before you continue, I just want to pinpoint the area we're looking at here because it's very important that the park covers Grand Gita, Sino, and River G. So if you look up where you see the butterfly, all the way up there, you see uh, uh, that's the Jaudi Putu, that's Grand Gita. And then if you go to the right of this butterfly, you see Siboken, that's River G. And then you come all the way at the bottom here, you see with the star is Dodwicken. That's my hometown. That's where I was born and raised, right? So I'm not an endangered species though. And Shadrach, so that's a very important that people keep in mind that this, and then you go on the left-hand side where you see I think that's the government camp area. That's Bokonjire. So most of the time, people use Bokonjire in their political talk. So all this area is the park. It's not a separate area fenced off. People live in these communities. They go to school and do stuff just like everybody else. But what does SCC mean? Because I see Dodioken has a star, meaning SCC.
So SCC is Sapo Conservation Center. It's a research center set up by Fund Flora International and FDA to promote scientific and social research in Sapo. So it's in the park headquarters and is where you, if you're student researchers, which we encourage a lot of students to come to Sapo, national and international students, is where you most likely be if you're working with or collaborating with FFI and FDA. One point you touched very important quickly before you get on to the next question about the fact that people live in these areas. So in the actual boundary of the park, there is no one is allowed to live in the boundary of the park. Um, so because it's a category two on the IUCN categorization of protected areas, it's a national park. So people can only go in the park for sightseeing or for scientific research. But the area around the park, that area is lived by many people, thousands of people actually, and they depend on this forest for their livelihood, the forest around that area. The reason that is important is because in previous approach to managing the park had been militaristic, preventing people, not really collaborating with them. But the government and her partners have made a conscious effort to promote a more collaborative management of the park. That means that communities are valued as critical stakeholders in managing the park. Their rights are protected, they are consulted, and they input to the management of the area. So I just wanted to put that out there for the viewers because that might be a question that someone has about how the park is managed.
Shadrach, I want to ask you about the animals. So, I mean, obviously, animals don't know the boundary. You know, they can leave the park and come into the forest. You know, and there are two things I would like you to touch on. The first one is what happens when the animals stray out of the park. Are there people who hunt them, and what remedy do you guys have? And the second one is just I know that during the war, I read that during the war, a lot of people went into the forest to hide, and we know how traumatized people are with the civil war. So how about the animals? How do you see the animals? Are they traumatized? What kind of behavior do they have that can show us that they too were traumatized and went through the war?
Yes, so you're correct. During the civil crisis, a lot of the communities in that area went and sought refuge inside of the park because it's more challenging to get inside the park because the forest there aren't any like proper roads that the rebels could enter to use the golden forest. So people sought refuge in those areas. So after the war, the United Nations, working with the government of Liberia, intervened to relocate some of these people. Now, one thing I want to point out, which is important for what we will discuss subsequently is um, people were mining gold inside of the park. But because it was during the civil crisis, it was understandable at the time. Wasn't any law, actively stopping people from doing that. So some of these people were firstly relocated in 2004, 2005. The United Nations mission in Liberia supported a interim government and the new government of President Salif to evacuate some of these people. Some people left, but others, as you understand, stayed behind and were in these camps with various names that inside of the park. So the Rangers started to patrol slowly, slowly by 2007, 2008. The park started to come back to pre-war status. And then the government again attempted evacuation of communities around 2010, 2011. This time around, because they had previously received compensation, some of them, the police was brought in. And to cut long story short, it wasn't a kind of peaceful evacuation. And that left a bitter taste in the mouth of many of the residents of that area because they thought that the spillover effect of that eviction had negatively impacted them. So, there have been people off and on going in the park to do mining, which is illegal, and also hunting. So in 2014, when the Ebola outbreak happened again, there was an upsurge in illegal activities with people moving inside the park to engage in gold mining and hunting. So this continued on and off until 2018 when the government and her partners, led by FFI, supported a process where the communities were the ones that led a peaceful, and the emphasis here is on peaceful, eviction of illegal miners and hunters from the park. That doesn't mean that there isn't hunting going in the area. As you understand, most people in rural Liberia engage in hunting to get protein, for lack of, but also to engage in commercial hunting. They engage in commercial hunting to engage in the bushmeat sale. So this has been our biggest challenge. Has been the rangers patrolling the park for illegal activities, for hunting camps, for mining camps, and as long as we can have the rangers actively patrolling the park, it limits the amount of illegal settlements, like temporary hunting settlements that is in the park. So because the forest is contiguous, the park and the community, the forest is the southeast, as you both will know, is heavily forested. So the park is a forest, the community is the land around the forest. Animals is in all of these areas. So from time to time, people kill animals, and that is an issue that the Forestry Development Authority deals with um, in various ways through dialogue with community, through prosecution of people who violate. So it's something that continues to be remain an issue and continues to be addressed. And there are many things that have been done to address that. But I will stop here for now, and then we can keep on that later.
And Shadrach, concerning the hunting, right? Because again, I'm from Duduken, so I'm familiar. Is there any is there any boundary? Let's say if you are in Duduken, you have maybe 20 miles around the city or around the town for you to do your hunting. Don't go beyond. Or is it categorically do not hunt at all? Is that the case? And are there
No.
specific animals that you can hunt and some that you cannot?
Yeah, so I will start with the last questions. So we have in Liberia, we have what they call protected species. So these are animals because of either the fact that they're very rare or the population numbers is quite low, these animals are protected by law. So you're not allowed. So, for example, the wet-breasted guinea fowl is one of those. So these animals are protected by law, and once you kill that kind of protected animal, regardless of where you do the hunting of that animal, it is against the law. Then they have animals that people. So now the law is a little bit. The law says that unless there is a regulation for hunting, it's illegal to hunt. But the regulation for hunting has been a little bit slow in coming online. So in a way, people hunt. It's not technically allowed, but as long as the hunting is not inside of the national park, most of the time you will see the rangers. If it's not a protected species, the rangers will ignore. But the critical
But
thing is
Shadrach, when you say inside the conservation area, if you are
inside the
you're inside the park, so if you are in Dodovacan, you are inside the park, so you are not
no,
supposed to.
you're not. You're
Okay,
not inside
explain.
the park. So Duduekin is about 10 hours away from the park walking, I think.
Okay.
Duduekin is it's quite far from the park. So,
Because
but
Dennis
there's
have been hunting there. That's why.
if Dennis was hunting there in the past, he was doing it illegally. So I think now he will help us to talk to the Duduekin people. So just to come back to that, it's a kind of tricky issue because you can so protected species, unprotected species, right? But once the animal is killed and burned, it becomes difficult to distinguish if it's a protected species or not. It can be done with the more widely known species, but generally people are discouraged from hunting. So the FDA and partners to promote to reduce this dependence on hunting, they're working with communities to introduce some sustainable livelihood projects, sensitizing communities about the law, working with some of these hunters who are very they have been incorporated as rangers, so they have a kind of income to prevent them from engaging in hunting. Some of them are working with the FDA or partners in various auxiliary groups. So a lot of a combination of things have been done to reduce this whole pressure from hunting. But the truth is, hunting is a huge problem because it is mobile. Unlike mining, where the people have to be stationary, so it's easy to be detected by the rangers and then the camps destroy. Because the hunting is mobile, most of the people hunting, they move, they all always move from one place to another, and the forest is quite. You can easily pinpoint people in the forest. It's quite a challenge. It is our biggest challenge in Sapo, um, controlling, preventing, limiting the hunting of protected species and hunting inside of the park.
Before Jackie comes in, it might seem obvious, but what is the impact that mining or illegal mining is doing to the park? They're
So the
digging, they are
mining,
not killing any animals, right?
no. So the mining has a two negative impact. So
Okay.
mining is a magnet for hunting because the people in mining camp need meat, right? These camps are way inside the forest, so you have hunters going there to work and help to support them with bushmeat. So that's one impact. Um, the second impact is the physical action of mining as done by these artisanal miners. They dig up the place, they change the water cools, and increasingly we're seeing some of them are using mercury. And you know, in some of these communities around the park, they still use the creek water to drink
Yeah.
in some instances. And even if they're not drinking, they go to the creek to wash. So if you have a heavy metal like mercury in the water, the impact is, quite obviously harmful negatively on people's health. But then um, when these miners go inside of the park, the changed water courses. So you see an area they will block off the creek, divert the water to another part, and obviously the ecological balance in this ecosystem needs to remain as it is. If you go there and you do too much of a change, too much of an impact on the natural system and processes, the impact is negative. You have a negative impact on the health of that ecosystem. So the mining impact is now we have less mining camp in the park. Most of the mining that happening is people going to some of these old mining sites to try to wash some of the gravel that was dug a while back or that they washed a while back. But obviously, it is a challenge because of the area, accessibility, and size.
But Shadrach, so sometimes, like when you're driving, even in Monrovia, right, or on the highways, you see animals, like pangolins. Those are protected species. You see people selling these bush meat on the road, in plain sight of the police, in plain sight of people, and our people buying these things. I mean, isn't there like a law, a wildlife law, or something that prohibits this? And then how many rangers are in the park, and are they is it, if are they effective enough? How many of them are able to patrol the park?
So there is a law. There's a law is called the Wildlife Conservation Protected Area Management Law. So the government and our partners through a structure called the National Species Working Group set up a task force. So the next time you're in Liberia, you are less likely to see people selling bushmeat on the road. The task force has been out arresting people around Monrovia for selling. So they started with sensitization, and now they arrest people who they see selling bushmeat on the road. It still happens. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but the frequency with which you have seen bushmeat on the road in Monrovia is it has reduced. If you're in a rural area, though, you still see bushmeat in communities, in various population centers that are transit point for bushmeat trade. Enforcement of this wildlife law, because the thing people need to realize is these protected species, there's a science behind why they are protected. So it's not arbitrary list of animals that is being, drawn up as protected needs to be protected. So most of the animals on that list, which for example includes the forest elephants, chimpanzees, of course, you talk about that, pangolin, which is the world's most trafficked mammals. They've been trafficked for their
Yes.
skill, so they are protected by law in Liberia. Birds of prey, these birds of prey like the hawk, the eagles, they're protected by law. Zebra duiker, which is one of the animals on our poster you show. Um, these animals are protected for two main reasons. One, if you another animal which we can I can touch on quickly is some animal called the pygmy hippopotamus. So you most people know the normal hippopotamus, which is from eastern and southern Africa and parts of West Africa. But the pygmy hippopotamus is a relative of the larger hippopotamus that is endemic. It's only found in 4 countries in the entire world. Liberia is as the center of that population, and then the countries around Liberia, Sierra Leone, Ivory Coast, and Guinea. So outside of these 4 countries in the entire world, you cannot find a wild population of pygmy hippopotamus. It's in the middle there with the black and white photo. So because it's a rare species, if it's only found in 4 countries, obviously the population, the number will be low, and the habitat that maintains this animal is already on a trip. So it's protected by law because it's a rare species. Then you have animals like elephants that are protected under international agreement. The CITES agreement protects elephants. you all know or you have heard about the crisis of elephant being killed for their talks. So elephants are protected because they are also rare, the numbers are reducing. So these protected species, they are protected because if we don't stop killing them in Liberia, they will become extinct. We won't see them in Liberia again. Which is important to remember that the forests don't exist without these animals. So everything in the forest or in the ecosystem works together. It's a delicate balance. Each animal has a role, has a niche that is filling. And if you don't have these important animals, what the scientists call the empty forest syndrome, you have some sort of cascade or a kind of extinction cascade. One animal is not there to play its role, it leads to a decline in another animal, and so forth and so forth. So we can say in Liberia we have a lot of forests, but if we kill all our animals, we have a dead forest, then we have no forest.
Mm.
So a resilient forest needs animals. A vibrant and healthy forest needs animals. So as a country, as a matter of national sovereignty and national security issue, we need to protect our animals if we need to protect our forests, if we need to protect our ecosystem, because our lives depend on those things. So we need to protect the animals. The second
Shadrach,
thing, yes,
what
go ahead.
stops those animals? I know there are other parks around. Sapo National Park is not the only place. Yeah. What stops the animal from, say, walking to Guinea or Ivory Coast and leaving our forest? Or how do we prevent them from going to other places?
So the Upper Guinea Forest ecosystem that was mentioned in the beginning in West Africa, Liberia has the largest remaining portion. The last estimate says 42%. I would like to think it's more because in that time, other countries have been cutting forests. We've been cutting forests also. But overall, if you look at the satellite imagery, we're still the greenest country in West Africa. Now, this is important because it put us in an advantageous position as the world, moves to um, environmental consciousness and all of the benefits that comes with that. So the animals could go to Guinea, but the problem there is that Guinea has less forest than Liberia, so the animal are less likely to go to Guinea. Recently, I don't know if you follow it on the news, there have been two elephants
Yes.
leaving from Guinea, coming to Liberia, going to Africa, and it's been a very, like, they've been like sensationalized that news about how they're moving about. But that is something that will happen to us if we destroy our forests and the forests in other countries remain. Then our animals, they don't have Liberian passports, I know, but our animals will leave from Liberia and travel to Ivory Coast or Guinea if they're not killed on the way. So these animals are free to roam, they are free to move wherever they want to move. But as you know, they have population centers all along the way, and they because of the way we use animals in Liberia. It's not like in other countries where wildlife are very protected. They become kind of used to humans. It's very difficult for our animals to leave the forest to travel, um, outside of the areas that are forested. So there is that danger, yes, but I think beyond that danger of the animals leaving and going to other countries, I think the real danger is the animals finishing, which is a real possibility, and then we left with empty forests, and then we'll be left with declining healthy forests, and then of course it goes down from there.
Yeah. Shadrach, talking about sensitization and education, um, what are the people doing to inculcate in the curriculum of the little kids, conservation, to teach them that they should not be killing animals, or if their parents are doing it, what kind of conservation training are being put in the curriculum? And then the second part to that question is, you talked about interns coming to do research in the park. Could you talk a little bit about that? And then the third question is about deforestation. We know that Ghana has 60% of the forest all gone because of deforestation, and in Madagascar now, the president is saying that each citizen should plant 5 trees. That's demanded. Plant 5 trees to bring back, to reforest the forest. So talk a little bit about the curriculum for the young kids, the internship or research opportunities that's available, and how we can go about reforesting our country.
Okay, thank you. So I'll start with deforestation. So when you hear stories like what the president in Madagascar is urging the citizens to do, a tropical forested nation similar to Liberia, island nation, so the species are kind of different though, but with the same problems we have with deforestation. It it goes to say that our focus in Liberia should be on protecting the forest instead of reaching the level where we have to plant the forest back. Because reforestation, after deforestation, is never as effective as protecting the forest. First of all, you won't be able to get or achieve the diversity that existed before the forest was cut down. So, from a scientific perspective, that is almost impossible over a large area. The second thing is, for tropical forest trees, you in countries in the temperate zone, the trees reforestation campaigns are kind of more successful because the diversity is less. So for tropical forested nations, the technical expertise needed to implement a successful reforestation campaign is very expensive. We're already struggling with protecting the forest. Um, if we come to talk about planting new forests, it's kind of very expensive for us. So our focus will be on protecting what we have and increasing it. Then if you protect it, you can increase it. Naturally, the forest has a very good regenerative capacity. It will be able to come back, rebound. Research opportunities. So the Sapo Conservation Center is we offer research in the biological and social sciences. Um, Sapo is understudied, although it's well known, although it's kind of something that everyone in the scientific world is aware of. Is understudied. The last inventory that was done in Sapo, the last holistic inventory that was done in Sapo, and at the time the focus of that inventory was on trees, was in 1963 to 1967. At that time, the Forestry Development Authority was the Bureau of Forest and Wildlife Conservation in the Ministry of Agriculture. And the German Forest Mission came and they surveyed what was called Sapo National Forest at the time. So most of the information available about the plant species, the baseline information is from the 1963 to 1967 survey that was done by the German Forest Mission. After that, there has been some botanical survey. An amazing thing about Sapo is every time there's a botanical survey in Sapo, a new species or species new to science is discovered, which is very important in this age of bioengineering and all of the genetic information that new species offer us in fighting diseases, in adapting to climate change, all of that. So every time there's a survey in Sapo, uh, targeted survey, new species are discovered. So we encourage research, botanical research. We also encourage research on animals in Sapo. For example, people to come and study small mammals, people to come and study butterflies. There are more than 350 known butterflies, but the entire park has never systematically been surveyed for butterflies. So we have 350 species rapidly assessed. So imagine what awaits if we have a full survey of butterflies, for example. Insects is a very rich, unexplored topic that people are encouraged to come and look at. And also working the cultural, researching the cultural values of local communities, because we think for conservation that provides insight. So just as an aside to that, some of our messaging around protection of chimpanzee is based on the fact that it is culturally valued for local people. The same goes for the elephant and other species. So the brochure, I shared the brochure with you. Please do share the brochure, post on your page, your Facebook page, or whatever. Encourage people. People are encouraged to send emails to the emails that are listed, or call the numbers that are listed, and you'll be helped if you want to do research on how to go about the process. The last thing you asked about was the conservation education bit. So around Sapo, we've established FFI and FD have established 24 environmental education clubs. So Dennis in a school in Duduken, they have an environmental education club where teachers were trained, and there was a science module developed by USAID and the Ministry of Education a couple of years ago. Those materials have been provided to the teachers and the leader of the environmental education clubs, and they're working with these children to have them, the secondary school kids, to have them informed of the value, the environmental value of places like Sapo National Park and why it's important to protect biodiversity and all of that. So we are taking a kind of a holistic approach to improving things, but our challenge is, the starting condition that we face. People are I don't want to say full economically challenged in those areas. So it is a challenge for us to work with them to stop some of these things that are threatening the health of places like Sapo.
And Shadra, like we mentioned here, in Sapo, this is the species, right? 125 plus mammals, 350 plus butterflies, 500 plus plants, 200 plus birds, and so on and so forth. Most of the time, I see that I don't want to say the emphasis is on conserving the animals. What have been the some of the species or some of the plants that have been found, and what importance do they hold?
So in 2018 or 2018 and 19, we did a research on, there's a tree called the death tree. People know it as the Sassewu tree.
Yeah,
Where it grows is the largest parasite, largest plant parasite. Where it grows in the forest, no other tree grows around it, and that it had normally been found. Most botanical records of that tree are being in northern part of Liberia. So we went to look for it in Sapo, and
is there?
we're very successful. We
Mhm.
found it, and what was interesting is the stories behind that tree, the kind of rituals you're supposed to follow to go and see the tree, what someone can do and not do if they see the tree. It's very educative and informative for us, and we design some of our awareness around the presence of that tree. There's another tree called Casa Fiki Fiki in Liberia, normally called it Ghana Ghana. So the people use it in their gin, so it's threatening because the problem there is that the way they harvest it, they go and they take the entire bark from around the tree. Obviously, the tree will die if you do that to the tree. So Casa Fiki Fiki has been found in Sapo. Um, and the importance of these trees is that the link that we try to show with these trees is that people in the communities, and this is where it's very important for us, um, the cultural research, people in the communities know and value these plant species. In as much as they value the animals, they know and value these plant species. So when you tell them about the presence of these species and explain to them the threats that they face, they are, willing to work with you to protect them. But we haven't really had a lot of issues with over exploitation of these trees in Sapo in particular, mainly because of two things. One, we haven't really looked at threatened trees that have been overexploited, but where we have looked at it, kind of it hasn't been a problem. We haven't seen a lot of overexploitation of it. And the second thing is that because there's so much forest in the southeast, sometimes people are able to harvest, um, if it was one or two of those trees, over harvesting will kill the tree, but because it's spread across, they are able to harvest in different locations, different times. So we recognize the importance, and we have actually been doing research on that. And there was a botanist in Sapo, I think, a couple of years ago, and he discovered some new plants that has been named after a Liberian botanist. Uh, uh, and that's something of pride because he's a local botanist. Remember, he's somebody from Brangida actually, and it's something of pride that a tree has been named after him. You will have heard about a tree called Tetrabellina. It's only found in Liberia and is in high number in the Sapo area. We also use that kind of information to help people to see the value of protecting the forest.
Wow, this sassewood tree is very important. We call it churutu. So, so yeah, people. In fact, people believe that besides drinking it to tell who's a witch or not, even the bark, if you chop it off, you can talk to it. If it goes, if it face down means you are guilty, face up means you are free, and all kinds of things. So I'm very interested in.
We shouldn't get to the science or pseudoscience of the Sassewu tree.
So I'm very interested in knowing more about those kind of trees. Jackie?
Yes, we have a question that I'm supposed to ask, but I know, Dennis, are you taking calls or no?
Yeah, let me first let's start with our comments and then we're going to bring in our calls. The phone lines are open again. This is focus on Liberia Primetime Sunday. Our guest is Shadrach Kawinlin, and we are talking about the Sapo National Park. That's the forest area that covers Grand Jide, Sino, and River G counties. And I'm a proud, I come from Dudwiken, that is part of that Sapo National Park. I mean, when we were like kids on the mission there, they used to show us the pictures, and I mean, it was beautiful. I hope it still is. By the way, I left from there when I was 14, and I haven't been back. So you really took my mind back to it. Let's see some comments here. Paula said, "Good evening, here, folks. I'm appealing to you to kindly help me finish my education vocationally." So you see, we're talking support. Someone has a problem. So Jerome said, "Can't wait to see this." Ibrahim said, "Great young man and a unique leader in this area of specialty." Jefferson is watching us from Ganta. Nikita said, Christian said, "Great show. I think they should be hosted constantly. Want us to host this show all the time." We have a question here, Chandra, from Gabriel Carter. Do we have any law that protect those animals from poachers? If someone is caught with a protected animal, what happens?
I think he answered that with the wildlife law. Yeah.
Abby Tyler said, "Growing up, heavy forested areas were viewed as places of mystery, filled with evil spirits. I didn't like going into national parks until I came to America."
Dennis, can I just make a comment about what Abby Tyler has said?
Yeah.
Because that is actually the point I wanted to make initially. We in Liberia, we always value things when it's not in Liberia. So Abby, and it's sometimes it's not a fault of the people. It's because they don't have proper education about these things. So you have people in Liberia leaving to go to, for example, uh, Ghana and go to national parks in Ghana when we have Sapo National Park in Liberia that has the ecosystem there is way more spectacular.
Yeah.
But it's just because they're not aware and they don't have the education about that about these things. So I think these sort of programs like these are important in helping people to appreciate and understand what we have and how we can make it better.
Thank you. Jerome Gilman say, are we using drone technology to protect and monitor park activities?
No, not yet. We don't have drone. We're not using drone in Sapo, but it's something that we know about and we are exploring the possibility of using. It's just that because of the canopy in Sapo is very challenging. Someone has attempted to use drone on 2 occasions, and the drone got damaged picking up. So it's really challenging to use.
Abby also said they need to protect those forests too because they might hold the key to the cure to many major diseases.
I agree with Abby. There's a lot of possibility of doing biomedical research in places like that.
Minor Warren Brown, Governor of Liberia, please protect the exploitation of logs and protect the mangrove swamp.
So yeah.
Kalilu Donzo, you are indeed Liberia's pride. Keep up the great job at Sapo, Pico. As your name, Pico?
Nickname.
Okay. Francis Cooper says Francis is watching from Istanbul. Uh, Morris Kofa, what is offered to the residents to stop the killing of the animals since this is their source of earning a living? By the way, Morris Kofa is from Bokonjire, which is also part of the Sapo National Park, so you should see where he's coming from.
Yeah. So Morris, I think that's a very important point you raised. And that was something I touched on earlier. I said the government or partners are introducing livelihood activities. For example, beekeeping is one of those activities that communities are being trained in. Um, so working with these local farmers to help them get an additional source of income reduces their dependence on the forest, which can include things like hunting. Um, Also working to improve the agricultural practices of farmers because sometimes farmers hunt as complementary income because the farm cannot produce sufficient crops that it can sell excesses. So that's something we're also doing. But our main issue, our main challenge is not normally with the local people who are doing hunting, low skill hunting. It's people coming in to do large scale commercial hunting. It's not allowed in that area. It's not allowed in the park. It's not allowed anywhere in Liberia. Partners organizations have, for example, worked with local women to help them to um, get other incomes like they become guards. We have a group of women working, they call them the eco guards, all women, all female group, and they receive some allowance to help talk about biodiversity impact. But more need to be done. That is something that we are aware of, and the government or partners are working to increase support for livelihood intervention. And although I can't go into nitty-gritty details, a lot of projects are upcoming that focus exclusively almost on the livelihood and social infrastructures of people who are actually custodians of places like Sapo National Park.
Shadrach, I want to talk about, we all know the park and the things are beautiful. How can we use the park for development to make money? And I will also mention that election is coming. Politicians are talking about ecosystem, ecotourism, and all that. So how can we use Sapo National Park to develop the country and make more money for the people, even people living in that area and the country as a whole?
And let me add that, let me add to Dennis, because my question is the same, and then you can just answer in one blow. So we were looking at the UNCTAD Economic Development Report, right? And it says that in 1995, the tourism in Africa was 24 million, right? but by the time 2008 came, it was 48 million. And then they're saying now that the tourism from Africa, the money alone it was 166 billion in 2011, right? Which is about 8.5% of the GDP of Africa. So South Africa alone, the Kruger National Park brought in 175 million dollars to South Africa some years ago. So with Dennis, I would like to ask, maybe ecotourism starts with people in Liberia, in the West Africa region. So why don't we showcase Sapo to us? We don't know Sapo, and we are Liberians, and you're trying to go and sell it to so how can we, especially now, people are going in December. Are there tours and talking about the communities around there? Maybe those people could be paid to take people into the park, because since they know the park, that's a way of livelihood. So are all of those things in the works that Dennis could take us as a tour guide from
Well,
weekend straight into Sapo?
Yes, thank you very much. I think the tours have started. Some companies have started to do
Oh,
tours, ecotourism related tours, and I think Sapo National Park is amongst places that is listed for tours. The major challenge, as for most part of rural Liberia, is the road to get to these places. But it's also an opportunity to get a unique kind of tourists, backpackers, people who want a wild experience, people who want a challenging experience and arrive at a destination as they find a reward. So that's an opportunity that exists. And you said the right thing about tourism. We are inward looking first. We want to encourage and promote tourism in Liberia amongst Liberians. If the COVID-19 has taught us one thing, is that if your tourism or ecotourism industry is based too much on foreign travels or visitors, um, something like a COVID can literally wipe out income for millions of people overnight. So if we have a robust ecotourism sector in Liberia, encouraging Liberians to travel more around the country, a lot of challenges around that. But if we can have increase the volume of people that are doing ecotourism locally, that's a good start. Communities are already acting as tour guides. The only thing now in Sapo is the volume is low. It's really, really low. But the people who take people to the park, it's community people are the ones that take people to the park, with, of course, with FDA. And we have a group of people, the main people that work with FDA or partners to monitor the animals, they are community people. They're former hunters, and these people know the forest inside out. Uh, I don't know how well Dennis know the forest, but these
oh,
people
I can close my eyes. I can walk backwards in the.
when he
these,
used to go hunting in the forest, he used to.
these people know the forest inside out, and every time they are tourists, they are the ones that lead work with the FDA and take these people in first. But the first question Dennis asks, how can we make money from the S&P? I think that's a question that, for me, the answer is very very simple. Actually, I think we have to be proactive. As a country, we have to seize the opportunity of the global push towards ecological consciousness. We have to leverage what we have and not react to others leveraging what they have. Most people, if you go, you are both in America. Most people think Ghana has more forests than Liberia, which is
It's
just
not
not
true.
true.
Yeah.
But because they have been able to, leverage in
To
their
market it.
advertise and all of that, and Liberia had an unexpected boost the last time. Lonely Planet had Liberia as the place to visit, number one place to visit in the world. Unfortunately for us, COVID came right after Lonely Planet listed us as the number one place to visit. The government has started to look at things like this because they're now working to have a kind of Ministry of Tourism separate. They're debating in Parliament the last time. I think having a government agency exclusively focused on tourism is a good first step, where discussions like these can be had at the national level, and people can be made ambassadors, go to other countries, work with tour operators, and get some of these tourists that are coming to Africa to see, biodiversity or wild places to come and see places like Nigeria. They have a we have a national ecotourism and conservation working group, which is working, designing strategies, talking to stakeholders. So Liberia's ecotourism potential has been recognized over the last 2 3 years. Unfortunately, the COVID slowed down most of the plans. But if all of the projects that I know about are in the works to go online, come online, there's a huge opportunity that exists from starting small in war and then expanding outward. Um, and I think Liberia being COP, Liberia being Glasgow for the UN Climate Change Conference, maybe we need to ask them to pay us some money for protecting our forests so well.
Yes.
So Liberia has there's a kind of arrangement called Red Clause, reduction of emission from deforestation, forest degradation, where countries on a agreement or framework through the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change receives payment for sustaining forests. So that's one way the government is going. Norway, a couple of years ago, I think now it's been like 6 or 7 years, gave Liberia 150 million or something like this. That has been providing budgetary support for the government to not, do certain kind of logging to increase the number of protected areas in Liberia. So Liberia is actually already benefiting a bit from that, and we know the Norwegians in particular have had interest in paying us to protect our forests for a long time. And this agreement came during the region of President Salif. And the current government, the people at the Forestry Development Authority, are working to ensure that when this agreement comes to an end, which should be in 2 or 3 years, we will have shown to the Norwegians that because that was like a pilot money given to the government, and hopefully we can get the Norwegians to give us additional funds to protect the forest. So we just need to be as a country more proactive and jump on the opportunity. Don't wait for it to become, trendy, and then we start to try to catch grounds, because once it starts, it's difficult to catch up.
Right.
And hopefully we wouldn't be able to wait for the Norwegians. We might be able to know this natural resource is valuable and Liberians can take their own protection in their own hands. Then it's just one question before you go. So if somebody is in Liberia, let's say for Christmas, and they want to go to Sapo, if by some stroke of luck they're able to get there, right? Do they go to the FDA and get somebody to take them through the forest, or do they go to the community? Where would they go?
So ideally, so there's two ways to go to Sapo National Park. In both cases, the FDA has to be involved. So you can either get to Monrovia and go to the FDA office in Monrovia, and then they take you through the process, or you can go directly to Sapo National Park. Once you get there, the FDA gives you the permit. I think you pay a fee. I think it's $20 fee for the permit, and then you go in the forest every day. You stay in the forest. There's a fee attached. The people that take you, you give them some money. The equipment you use, you pay some money. So it's quite straightforward once you're in Sapo. I hope to see you in Sapo. If you plan to come to Sapo, then it's
definitely. I will be there.
Yeah, so yeah, it's the FDA has to be involved. That's critical because under the law, no one is allowed to enter Sapo National Park without the guidance of the forestry department. Yeah.
I have one question here. We go to a few comments again so we can draw this down. Jackie mentioned earlier about the education, about educating the people in the communities to conserve the forest. On top of that, I'm looking at education for the whole country. To what extent is this in our curriculum? I mean, you are in Monrovia. Are you studying about our national forests, the parks, conservation? Because I come from Dodoken in Sapo National Park, right? And normally what we do is, if you in Monrovia now, it's like, what are we going by in the country? So that place is considered country. Nobody wants to think about it because what we know, so we are graduating from being in the interior to coming in the city. And because these things are not in our book, so when I went to Monrovia College, I didn't see anything about Sapo National Park or anything about Jiglo, nothing, nowhere. So, what is the Ministry of Education doing, or what is anybody doing to inculcate these things into our curriculum, so that people know that this and study ourselves and don't wait for no way to say, "Hey, I'm giving you money to take care of what is helping you to live."
Yeah, I think I was reading the elementary geography book. There's a mention of Sapo National Park in the elementary books. They talk a little bit about Liberia environment, but to be honest, there's more information in Liberia science and geography book about other countries in Liberia. That's a problem that the Ministry of Education needs to solve. And if the Ministry of Education solves that problem and having more Liberia focused content, then issues about the environment in Liberia will be prominent. But I think the partners that I working with the government, like USAID, um, they have developed our environmental curriculum, which is being used in some schools. I don't know how many schools, but it's focused exclusively on Liberia. That curriculum has a lot of information about Liberia, the environment in Liberia, but it's complementary to the national curriculum. So it's something that needs to be addressed. How can we have more country-focused content
Yeah.
um, incorporated in the content of our education materials?
Let me read a few comments here. Justina say one. I love this show. My focus is to help with development within the Sapo National Park. Ibrahim Ajame, what became of the elephants that recently returned to their breeding grounds after years of being unseen in the park? Francis Cooper, thanks for the show, Mr. Kewayan. Just a quick question. Can we say that Liberia is going in the right direction with biodiversity conservation? And Mianta said, knowledge is power, education is key to unlock it. That's what is lacking. And last year, Eugenia here say, hi, Jackie.
Hi, Eugenia.
Um, and so I will start with Francis' question. Do I think Liberia is going in the right direction in biodiversity conservation? I would say yes. Do I think more can be done? I will also say yes. Do I think more needs to be done? I will also say yes to that. And for me, it's actually about um, the small changes that add up. Those small changes, enforcing the law on the books, for example, um, can help to improve biodiversity conservation. So, with people being arrested and prosecuted, that wasn't something that was happening in Liberia previously. Recently, someone was sentenced to 15 years in Lofa for killing an elephant. Um, so we've seen these changes. People were prosecuted for selling live chimpanzees. We're seeing all these changes. So we are going in the right direction for biodiversity as related to biodiversity conservation. But of course, more can be done and more needs to be done. The elephants. So Ajami's question about the elephants. Oh, so these elephants are in the park. They've been in the park. We see them in the park all the time. But I think he's mentioning the two elephants who came from Guinea and were going. They were in Liberia and went Ivory Coast and came back to Liberia. I think those two elephants they are habituated. They just kind of like got used to people in Guinea because the condition around, they were living in a community, they were protected, and the communities didn't go after them, so they became habituated. So they used to human being. So there are two theories about why they went to Liberia. One is that um, they were looking for food. That's one theory. And the other theory is that they might have been on that route many years ago. So that's why they came back, because elephants, as you know, they have a very, very good memory. So those elephants are an indication, the fact that they came to Liberia, they are an indication of the health of the forest in Liberia, and the fact that we were able to keep them alive in Liberia for the duration of their stay is also a good thing, which is something that we all need to celebrate. That for once we didn't have endangered wildlife coming to Liberia and getting killed after it was protecting other countries. So, I just like to say those elephants represent the potential that there is for Liberia as it relates to wildlife tourism. But the only caveat I also want to add is that most of the time people want to compare the wildlife we have in Liberia with what is seen in East and Southern Africa. So it's a function of the kind of ecosystem they have. They are more of dry land, so open ecosystem, open grazing, so you can see the wildlife all the time. Ours is a tropical rainforest. Predators and prey are always, in a cat and mouse game, so they've learned to be very still and to kind of camouflage themselves properly. It doesn't mean that we don't have these things in Liberia. We have them, but we need to protect them. Otherwise, we are headed for trouble.
Thank you. Jackie, let's,
Yes,
let's draw down the curtains.
okay. Thank you so much, Shadrach. Thank you so much. We learned a lot about the Sapo National Forest. Well, Dennis already knew about the forest, but
Not
but I
as
learned
much
a lot.
as I learned today.
Yeah, yeah. You are a wealth of information, and we hope we can have you back to talk some more about the park, about conservation efforts, about teaching the kids about conservation efforts, and about those two elephants. I feel that those two elephants were traumatized during the war, and they just came back. That's what I feel. But thank you so much, Shadrach. I mean, we learned a lot, and for those of you who are going home for December, please make sure to stop by the FDA and get your permit and go to Sapo National Park and get somebody, give them their Christmas also and go and visit the park. I want to thank you very much. And do you have any last comments before we
Yeah.
close?
Before Shabra, before you come in, let me just advertise what is coming at 6 o'clock. We have on point. That's Jerome and George will be discussing some top hot button issues here, including the printing of the new money, the CPP new chairman, and also the power theft in the country. Then at 9 p.m. tonight, we're going to be having a debate that I, including my co-host and Sonny, will be moderating on JNB versus ABC. Who will represent the CBPP and who is best suited to go against President Weah and defeat him? Join us 9 p.m. tonight, right here on Focus on Liberia. Shadrach, I want to thank you so much. As Jackie said, your parting comments, and we're going to have you back soon. I want you to promise that with your instones before you leave.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Jackie. It was a pleasure coming here to speak about something I'm very passionate about. Very passionate about diversity conservation, and by virtue of that, I'm very, very passionate about Sapo National Park, which is one of the most, if not the most important place for biodiversity in the Upper Guinean forest ecosystem. And as you both said, we need to own what we have as Liberians. We need to be proud of it. We need to work together to protect it. And one thing, my final word is that you can do a lot as an individual to protecting biodiversity. I always say to people, you don't have to be in the field doing research. the one commitment which is very easy for every Liberian to do is to make a pledge to not eat bushmeat. If you don't eat bushmeat, if there's a reduced demand for bushmeat, there will be reduced threat to the wildlife that will all depend on. You can consider yourself a biodiversity conservation. So everyone within the show that still eat bushmeat, please, the people in America, you still want to get bushmeat in your tteokbokki. It's as sweet without the bushmeat. Make a commitment. There's a whole lot of crime associated with the bushmeat that reaches you. The wealth of people in the rural areas has been taken away. Livelihoods have been taken away with bushmeat being sold commercially. So make a pledge tonight. Beg you for Mama Liberia, please don't eat bushmeat and protect Liberia biodiversity.
Even groundhog.
Yeah, don't eat bushmeat. Just don't eat
Okay.
bushmeat.
Oh,
It's easier to not just eat it because when you get to the species level, is this groundhog? Is this pangolin? Then it becomes a slippery slope. So just don't eat bushmeat.
thank you,
Thank
Jackie.
you.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shadrach. And thank you all for joining us for this very, very important discussion. We are so glad to have Shadrach here. And as he has promised, he will come back.
I
And
will
for
come
those of
back.
you going home, yeah, find your way there. And whether you are human Liberian citizens or whether you are animal Liberian citizens, we're all Liberians. And we will close with our song and we'll say thank you. And please make a vow not to eat bush meat and protect our animal citizens. So Sapo National Forest, right? We will uphold it and we will protect it in every form. Thank you, Shadrach and Dennis. We're all Liberians.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our